Hello, I'm Dave LAIGHT. Welcome to episode 3 of the Be Happy podcast. This episode 3, is called Decide and Commit. Decide and commit. But before we get into this episode, I'd like to recap on episodes 1 and 2, if that's okay with you. This podcast, it's about all things happy, about getting happy, staying happy, living a fulfilled life, finding success and living dreams. If you are young, this podcast, it is for you. I'm trying to share with you all the things that I wished someone had shared with me when I was young. If you listen and take on board the ideas and the notions and the ideology and you put them into practice, you will become ready to go and make your dreams come true, to find your success and to find great happiness. If you are an older person, this podcast is for you too. They say you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, but go and talk to any dog trainer and they will tell you that that is a load of crap, because you absolutely can teach an old dog new tricks. You're never too old to change your ways. You're never too old to start a new life and to go and to make your dreams come true as well. So if you are an old dog, absolutely you can be taught new tricks. Just remember Ebenezer Scrooge. Do you remember this guy? He was from the Charles Dickens story, A Christmas Carol. He was a man who lived a miserable existence well into his older years. But even he was able to change his mentality and his outlook, and he did it overnight. And he went about and implemented huge change in his life, which brought him and anyone else that he came into contact with great happiness. And if you remember the story, it took an intervention, big word, intervention, from 3 ghosts from the past, the present and the future to generate that massive change in his attitude and in his outlook. If you are somebody young or old, male or female, and no matter what your starting point is right now, and you are not happy at this moment in time, and you are looking for help, it may take an intervention in your life to bring about massive change for you. That's what this podcast is about. The aim of this podcast is to be an intervention in your life if you want it to be an interruption in your life, to interrupt your current way of thinking, to interrupt your current way of doing, to interrupt your current getting, and to dispute popular myths and expectations that you may have inside of you. And it's there to introduce to you different ways of thinking, different mentalities, new strategies, speakers, coaches and ideologies, I like that word, all of which are designed to help you to move to a better place in your life. A better place mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally and maternally. If you are looking for any of this, then please subscribe, follow, like and listen in, tune in. Because what have you got to lose? Nothing, I would suggest to you. Nothing but a little piece of your time. But on the other hand, what have you got to gain? The world. That's what. Your world can become your oyster. You can go on and discover the fantastic feeling, and it is a fantastic feeling of true inner happiness, and there is not a feeling quite like it. And by the way, this podcast, it is not about blue sky thinking. It is not all theory. and no substance. It is not about looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses. And one thing it definitely is not is all fluffy and nice. Just because this is the happy podcast, it doesn't mean that it's all fluffy and nice. This podcast is based in hard fact. It is delivered by someone who is not mega famous, who has not got millions of pounds in the bank, who is not world famous, and who does not live in a world that only a few people can ever experience. Because sometimes when you listen to these type of speakers, they do not resonate with you. They're all great speakers, but sometimes they may not resonate with you because what they have seems unattainable for you. You haven't got what they've got. You haven't got their talent. You can't emulate them. So it can be easy to dismiss what they're saying. But by dismissing what they are saying, you are missing out on your life. Missing out on the possibility of improving your life. This podcast, the power of this podcast is it is delivered by me, Dave LAIGHT, Mr. Average, 58 years old, married man, 4 kids, 1 grandchild, hence the hat, grand dude, and I've got a dog. To young people, I would say do not switch off at this point just because I'm an old person, just because I've got some grey hairs on my head, because believe you me, those grey hairs, they do mean something. They have been well earned, and I mean really well earned. And they have given me something special that money just cannot buy. And that thing that's so special, I want to pass on to you. That special thing is experience and perspective. And they do say, you can't buy experience. So young people, please, just listen in, don't switch off. This podcast is about real-time talking. And I love that phrase, real-time talking, because it's real time because I'm talking about what I'm living, what I'm going through right now. I'm talking about what I'm experiencing right now, what I'm learning right now. If you like, it's on the job, learning, talking and training. This is not a theory-based podcast. It's based in fact, in real time. It's talking in real time from a real person. If an ordinary person like me can achieve greatness, success and pure happiness in my life, so can you. In this podcast, you will experience some hard facts and you will experience some challenging questions for you that you will have to answer for yourself, because after all, if you don't know this is going to be a surprise. Life is hard. Getting back your happiness is hard. Being successful is hard. Making your dreams come true is hard. But please take on board this quote from Les Brown, a world famous speaker, because it may well motivate, inspire or help you in some way. I love this guy. He's done a lot for me in my life. I regard him as a personal friend and I don't even know him. Here's his quote. He says that anything that comes to you hard in life, anything that you've got to fight for, that you've got to work hard for and give up your time, your peace and your sleep for, is always worth it when you get it in the end. And here endeth the recap for episodes 1 and 2. Before we move on to the subject matter of this podcast, which is in episode 3, and as you remember, it's called Decide and Commit, I just want to share with you the fact that there are times in your life, there are times in our lives when we have just got to go with our gut feeling, when we've just got to go with our intuition. There are times in life when you have just got to believe in the process of life. For example, just take a plant, take a beautiful plant. It can take months to grow a beautiful plant. The process of growing the plant first involves preparing the ground, then planting the seed, then tending the seed, and then once you started doing that, you've just got to hold on. You've got to stand back, keep watering, keep tending, but you've got to stand back and hold on to faith and belief in the growing process that your plant will grow. And it's an important thing to do, right, that you've got faith and belief in the process, because sometimes you won't see anything happening. And having faith and belief is believing that something's going to happen even when you can't see any evidence of it happen, because you can tend that seed in the first couple of months and nothing will appear to be happening. You don't see any signs of life or growth at all. And at this point, it would be so very easy to give up on your seed, to stop tending to it, to stop giving it water and to stop feeding it. And if you do that, what happens? The seed stops growing and the miracle of life does not happen and your seed dies. Take another example of a pregnant woman. At the start of her pregnancy, she's got to look after herself and her baby. And then all she can do is to hold on to the faith and the belief that the miracle of life will take place. She's got to trust in the process of life, that her baby will grow and it will be born and be born healthy. Apply this thinking to this podcast. The episodes in this podcast are laid out in a step-by-step process that will lead you, if you stick with the podcast, to all the good and the great things that you want to get from your life. If your life is not great at the moment, you absolutely can, believe me, turn your life around. You've just got to listen with an open mind. You have to trust in the process. Just have trust and belief in the process of this podcast. Even when this podcast seems to be talking rubbish, and at times it will appear to be talking rubbish, and even when the content of this podcast seems strange or stupid, and there is going to be times when it seems strange or stupid, but you just need to keep hold of that faith and that belief. I'll say that clearly. You just need to keep hold of that faith and belief and have the courage to put into practice the things that you're taught. So finally, let's get into the subject matter of episode 3 of this podcast series, which is called Decide and Commit. Get ready to decide and commit. To explain decide and commit, I want to tell you a story. So please make sure you're sitting comfortably, and then I will begin. The story starts one day, once upon a time, in Lido di Jesolo, Italy, which is a famous beach resort 20 miles down the road from Venice in northern Italy. And I just love Italy, and I just love the Italian people. Now, my family and I have holidayed in Lido di Jesolo, or Lido di Jesolo, as the locals call it, for over 20 years. And on one particular holiday, I get up early every single day on holiday. I go to bed very late. I don't want to miss a thing. But on one particular day, I'd gotten up very early, to catch the good light and to catch that creative feeling that you can get only at the onset of a beautiful day. I wanted to make a motivational video, and put some motivational content out into the world, and I was going to film it on the beach, which I did. And when I'd finished, I made my way back to the hotel, which was on the beachfront, and I was going back up to have some breakfast with the family. Now, as I entered the pool area that looked down onto the beach, I struck up a conversation with a disabled lady. Now, I'd noticed this lady before because she used a Segway wheelchair. Like Segway scooters. Well, these, they're self-balancing, etc. Well, this was a Segway wheelchair, and I'd never seen one before. It balanced itself on any gradient on its two wheels. It was just a very cool thing. The lady asked me what I had been doing on the beach, as she said she'd been watching me as I'd filmed from the pool area. So I explained what I was doing, and then we just entered into a conversation, and I said to her, I love your wheelchair. And she talked about it, and she told me about it, and she said that it was very expensive. It cost more than a small car would cost. And being a nosy person, because that's what I am, I went on to ask her about her life. What did she do, and where did she come from? And she told me the following story, and she gave me this great piece of advice, truly great piece of advice, which I am now going to pass on to you. She came from the Czech Republic, and she told me that she used to be a very poor person, that she had worked in the real estate industry but never had really made much money of it. And she said, as you can see, I am a disabled person, and that had always made her feel at a disadvantage. Now, one day she was using a lift, There was just herself and another man in the lift. And as the lift started to go up, it broke down, trapping both her and the man between floors, and they were trapped there for a while. It was in this lift that her vulnerability leapt to the forefront of her mind, and it resulted in her literally changing her life. Now, the man, he was a perfect gentleman, no problem there, but she couldn't help feeling while she was trapped in that lift, scared and very vulnerable. The lift got fixed and she and the man went about their business. But that feeling of vulnerability, that feeling of vulnerability wouldn't leave her alone. She just couldn't get rid of it. And she came to the conclusion for herself that she had to do something about it. She looked to her talent, which was in the real estate business, buying and selling properties, and she decided that she was going to set herself up in her own business and that she was going to make enough money so that she would never ever feel vulnerable again. Years later, bringing the story up to date, she said that she became the most successful real estate agency, the most successful business at buying and selling properties in her country, and that she had become a millionaire, and that her story had been made into documentaries about her. Now, what I loved about her story was that she said that once she'd built up this very successful business, she sold it, because her aim was not to be some huge business magnate. It was simply to have enough money so that she would never ever feel vulnerable again. So she took the money and she literally ran. She ran into her happiness. And she said, "Look at me, nothing's changed. I am still a disabled person, but I am no longer a vulnerable person, and I am living free and I am living happy." I loved her story, and I wished that I'd got her name so that I could pass it on to you, so that me and you could be still checking her out online. But sadly, I didn't take that opportunity. But I did take the opportunity to ask her these following questions. I said to her, "Let me get this right. Once you was a poor person." She said, "Yep." And I said, "And now you is a millionaire." She said, "Yep." I said, "I just got to ask you this. What is it like to have all that money?" And she said, "It's great." And I loved that answer. I said to her, and here is the nub, here is the heart of this episode, here is the learning point from the whole of this podcast. I said to her, "What was the secret of your success?" And here it is. Here is the secret of her success. This is what she told me. She said, "The biggest thing in going to find your success is to simply make the decision. Make the decision to go and find it." And then she said, once you have made the decision, commit to it fully. Commit to it with everything that you have got and stick to your plan. So there you have it. The first step in finding real, true inner happiness for yourself is to decide to go and find it for yourself. The first step is simply to just make the decision to go for it. Then make the commitment and follow through on it. This first step in the process may seem a small, tiny step, but when you look back, you may discover that in fact it actually was the biggest step that you ever took in your life. So if you are not as happy as you want to be right now, take the first step. Go on, take that first step. Decide, make the decision to go for it and do something about it. Now there's a very old saying that comes from the East, comes from the Orient, which goes like this. I love this. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I put it to you that if you are still listening to this podcast at the moment and you are in need of finding some more happiness and success in your life, you want to make your dreams come true, then you are actually the student that is starting to get ready. So teachers will already be being lined up in life, by life, to come and help you. if you like, this podcast is a teacher here, willing and able to help you. It will introduce you. That's what I like to think of this podcast. I think I said it in episode 1. I like to think that this podcast is an introducer of things to you to help you in your life, to introduce you to other teachers who will show you, point you and lead you to the path of your greatness. Thanks for listening so much. Believe, baby, believe. Decide and commit. And also, please think about helping me to grow this podcast by subscribing, sharing, following, liking, etc., 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 because I want to reach as many people around the world as I possibly can, because I'm a person that believes that you can help change someone's life. Someone can change their life with a bit of a motivation from a word, a sentence or a phrase that could literally start them on the path to find their greatness. Stay safe, and above all, above everything else, please be happy.